Hey everyone, and welcome to a special Christmas episode of Cult Musical Zone. And we're here to talk about the criminally underrated seasonal cult musical, Babes in Toyland. We have a menagerie of cult musical aficionados with us today to talk about this often forgotten cult musical classic. So we'll go around and introduce ourselves and plug our socials. So let's start with our regular co-host, and then we'll go to our special guest. So Jamie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Starling. I am a Rocky Horror and other movie shadowcaster. I'm also a burlesque performer and drag king. And my social handles are Jamie, JAMI __ Starling. And yeah, that's how you can find me. And also cult musical aficionado. We're currently in my cult musical collection up there. Got Rocky Repo, and even though the room's not a musical, I got the room over there as well. That's me.
Oh, hi, Mark. And then our two returning co-hosts from New Jersey's Ordinary Kids.
Hi. I'm Mary Puffins. I'm with the Ordinary Kids, also a Rocky Horror Shadow Cast group. And my Instagram handle is Mary Puffins, also TikTok, same thing. And I'm excited to be here because I love this movie. Well, I didn't know I liked this movie. I love the original one. This one was cool too. So yeah, I'm excited.
And I am Hades Nuts, and you can find me on Instagram under Hades Nuts. That's HADESNUTZZ. I'm also one of the Ordinary Kids, which is a Rocky Horror Shadowcast group, and we do other things other than Rocky as well. And really happy to be here again. Thanks for having us.
Dressed up again.
I'm so glad to have y'all because these are just fabulous friends and fabulous co-hosts. We're all just a big cult music family. So I want to introduce our special guest hosts who have their own podcast. So if you guys would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Josh Gorski. I'm one half of the podcast, co-host for the podcast Video Dropbox podcast. And Joe and I, who you'll meet in a second, just basically came up with the idea to basically challenge each other to pick like a unique genre that you wouldn't ordinarily like pick. So we could basically talk about some of our favorite movies. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Joe Larson, second half of Video Dropbox. You can find us, it's at Video Dropbox Podcast on Instagram. Yeah, and we came across this one because I had challenged Josh to choose a made-for-network television movie, and his first pick is not streaming anywhere, unfortunately, so we fell back for Babes in Toyland to be seasonal. So,
well, it's kind of like a Mom for Christmas. Did you ever see a Mom for Christmas with Olivia Newton-John where she's a mannequin and she comes to life with, the Disney movie, the Disney Channel movie? That's a great one for all of y'all. A Mom for Christmas. Well, what we usually do when we talk about these cult musical classics, we talk about our first time seeing it, how we were introduced to the cult musical that we're dissecting and analyzing. So our special guest can briefly talk about their introduction to Babes in Toyland 1986. I always call it Babes in Toyland 1986. The video drop.
Yeah. So I hadn't seen this growing up. I think it became kind of a legend. You would hear like, oh, there was a movie with a young Keanu Reeves and Drew Barrymore. But my wife had grown up with it, and she would sporadically be singing Cincinnati, and I would be so confused. Like at one point, she showed me the video on YouTube. I'm like, I don't understand how this fits into a Christmas movie. And I'm still in that mindset a little bit, but the song is wonderful. So that kind of that led me at least to being very curious about checking this film out, especially finding out that the wonders of YouTube have the original broadcast cut of it as well.
Yeah, one of the things that was really interesting is, ironically, Joe's wife and my husband were both in our ear saying, we have to see Babes in Toyland 1986. Like, it's so fantastic. And same thing, like like Natalie, his wife, was showing him clips of Cincinnati. My husband was walking around the house singing like CIN, you know, like just and May the Years to Come was another one that was like pretty consistent around the house, especially now that we're in the holiday season. Like he'll just walk around and be like, "May we wish you a Merry Christmas." So like he had said, like neither of us actually had seen it until Joe just picked it at random because it was kind of just destiny. We figured that both our both our spouses were like basically telling us like you need to see this. And I think like the episode previously was kind of like a bummer episode. So like we were trying to like come back to sort of something more uplifting. And yeah, that's how we ended up watching Babes in Toyland and covering it.
That's very endearing. That is a very endearing story. Now, Jamie jumped at the opportunity to talk about this, and I was surprised because they're very edgy and very punky. So when they were like, "Oh my God, I have to do Babes in Toyland," I was so interested to know, Jamie.
Edgy and punky, that's what you think I am? I never consider myself that way.
Itchy.
Thanks. So funny. So how I ended up being introduced to Babes in Toyland was I distinctly remember it was winter break. It was like right before winter break. Like, you know, the teacher knows the kid's not going to pay attention at all the day before going on break. So, you know, we had a little like holiday party. I distinctly remember her like, you know, putting the VHS in. And here's the thing, I don't remember a whole lot of it, my first ever viewing of it, but I remember that Christmas / marriage song stayed in my head for fucking years. And I remember like this, you know, kind of fever dream, pastel colored fever dream of a movie. And I remember it was called Babes in Toyland, and for years it's just lived in this little like corner of my brain. And I finally rewatched it again a few months ago, and I remember like coming back, it just came back to me. Like I remember distinctly everyone else in my class is like falling asleep, and I was just watching the TV, just completely enraptured by it. So as soon as James mentioned that it was a cult musical and we were going to review it, I'm like, yes, please, I need to talk about this. So it's just a very strong, very like random, strong, specific memory that I have of watching this right before Christmas break. And it was just really nice to revisit it today. And you know, especially because it was around the same time I watched it when I was a little kid. So
You're going to have like a special little sweet nostalgic memory of it. And I can't wait to see you light up talking about it. So, two of our favorite New Jersey ghoul friends. When did y'all first see
I love that.
Toyland?
Oh, when we first saw it?
When did you first see it?
This was it. I didn't even know. I was like,
Oh,
oh, yeah,
yeah.
Babes in Toyland, 1934, of course. I love it. Yes. I had no idea until you said it. And I was like, oh, it can't be that. But it was. It was, in fact, that. And it was amazing.
The only experience like in my childhood to anything Babes in Toyland was the song like Babes in Toyland and like the saying, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like I had never known that there was a movie or anything other than just there was that cute little song. And so when you're like, oh, it's a cult classic and it's the 1987, all right, because that does need clarification because we watched, what was it, the one from the 30s?
1934.
1934, and it was kind of horrific, but
No,
it was
it's
also
horrific in every
amazing.
way.
It was amazing. Well, I mean, like, we're not here to discuss the horrors of 1937.
Oh, yeah. No,
34?
yeah, there was a
Yes, there was a couple of horrors in there, and it was but then we watched this one as well. And like I love the music in it. It was fun. It was whimsical. I love that it's basically her fever dream from getting a concussion, and then absolutely no medical help at the end. Like I thrived watching this 1980s classic because that's how medical stuff happened in the
It's true.
80s. That's America.
Good luck, everybody.
You're right. Well, you know, that was Reagan healthcare. Anyway, my first time seeing this film, I don't know if those of my age group or whatever, but there was a time when McDonald's used to sell VHSs. And they sold around the same time they sold Babes in Toyland. The Addams Family, and a couple other exclusive McDonald's VHSs. And VHSs were queen back in the 90s. And so you could go to McDonald's, whatever, and during the holiday season, they had the Addams Family movie, which we bought it there. Babes in Toyland, etc. So Babes in Toyland was released on VHS, and I distinctly remember watching it every night before Thanksgiving. So my mom would be cooking in the kitchen, whatever, and we started celebrating Christmas really early. My mom made sure of that. So the day before Thanksgiving, it became like an annual tradition for me to watch Babes in Toyland while my mom was cooking in the kitchen and things. And I always loved it. And one of my friends, she remembered it. She's like, "Oh my God, I got it from McDonald's as well." And so it always stuck with me, especially, may we wish you the happiest marriage. But it's just a sweet, sweet movie. And it's become like this culty underground thing because of the 80s and because of Keanu Reeves and because of Drew Barrymore. But also how innocent but yet cheesy it is. But it's now getting recognition, and we'll talk about its legacy now. But I think we can all agree, despite its campy, cheesy faults, it's a very endearing, very 80s musical. So it's definitely not the Annette Funicello version from the 50s. It is definitely not the black and white version that y'all watch from the 30s, which have been damn terrifying.
Hey, they colorized it.
It's great.
They
It's
colorized
beautiful.
it was pretty cool, but
And Barnaby was better. I'll say it.
Barnaby was hands down from 1934.
Yeah.
That was 1934 was the superior Barnaby. I will definitely give it up to 1934 Barnaby. But the new Barnaby, he was fun and like fashion forward, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the weird thing about this, so I told before we started the podcast, before Cult Musicals was a YouTube series, before it was an Instagram, it started off as a website that I did for undergrad. And I reached out to different cult musical stars to interview them via email. And I emailed Googie Gress, who played Georgie Porgy. And I redug through my archives today to find the interview that I did with Googie Gress in 2017. And I learned a lot. What's really interesting about this is that this particular movie started as a European theatrical movie that also was sold for the TV rights for America. So it was actually sold as two different types of movies, a made-for-TV movie in America, but also a German and European theatrical movie. So it's such a weird premise because the stars in this particular film were big at the time. I mean, Drew Barrymore had just come off of Cat Eyes, Firestarter, E.T. Keanu Reeves had just done Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. You had Jill Schoelen. You had Richard Mulligan, who plays Barnaby, who was in Empty Nest, which was the Golden Girls spinoff. And then you have Pat Morita. God bless Pat Morita. Mr. Miyagi. And you have Ellen Brennan, who played Mother Hubbard. So what do y'all think, before we get into the music and the legacy, what do you think about like this menagerie of just every 80s movie and TV star and 80s B movie actress and stuff just thrown together in the pot for this movie? What do y'all think about the casting choices?
Everyone knew exactly what movie they were in. And they played that exactly. Like they understood the assignment. They knew that it was definitely never going to be like a prestigious, perfect thing. They knew it was going to be a silly little film that the little kids will sit and watch in front of their TVs and eat Christmas cookies and pass out from a sugar high and remember it later, years later, with that one song stuck in their head. They knew exactly what they were doing. And yeah, they all brought their own uniqueness to each of their roles, and it's just a delightful cast.
It is. What do y'all?
Just delightful.
Oh, and of course, Mrs. Peacock, Ellen Brennan, of course. What do y'all? That's another cult connection. What do everybody else think about this? Keanu Reeves, Drew Barrymore, Richard Mulligan, Pat Morita, Ellen Brennan, Jill Schoelen. Jill Schoelen was in the cult musical Thunder Alley, which is a very over the top, very melodramatic cult musical that you can dig. I don't even think it was released on DVD, but it's very melodramatic. But what do y'all think? Everybody else think about this cast? Because it's just amazing.
This was an absolute all-star cast. Like I thought everybody was casted amazing. Like all everybody was. It was just great, and like having all those big names and Mr. Miyagi. Oh, I love the toy Mac. That was perfect. He was perfect for that role. I loved him. And like of all the characters, I gotta say, Mother Hubbard fucks.
You stole my line.
I did. I stole your line. I did. Well, when we were watching it, that was my callback.
I love her so much. She's everything
Amazing. Like so
is
good.
everything Ellen Brennan does from Mrs. Peacock to Babes in Toyland. She just eats and chews up the scenery. She's just amazing. That's why people love her. Video Dropbox. What do y'all think about this menagerie of 80 stars?
I was really happy in particular to see Jill Shonen in this kind of role because she's such an underrated scream queen. Like When a Stranger Calls Back and the Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund and Stepfather. So great. And that's what I really know her from. So seeing her being goofy in pastel colored Germany is pretty delightful.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, so when Joe and I covered this for our podcast, we watched the theatrical version, and then for this, we got prepped by watching the director's cut. And I know we'll probably get into it, but it's really interesting to see like how vastly different even some of the characters or sort of just the additional like line deliveries that's missing from the theatrical version. Like Eileen Brennan is shady as hell throughout the whole entire movie. I mean, yes, there are a lot of like fat phobic moments, but they're also very I don't know, just like sharp. Because there were lines that I didn't catch in the theatrical version that I wrote down that like there's a scene where she's with her kids and they're all like asking her a question and she's basically just like, oh, put an egg in your shoe and beat it. Get under the sink with the rest of the pipes. And I was like, what? It's just like insane just hearing sort of these lines that were cut. But again, like you said, she just chews the scenery and is so fantastic, just like Mrs. Peacock in Clue. So, and honestly, with the rise of the Drew Barrymore show and her doing those like mini reunions, I'm like, please, come on, Keanu Reeves, like we need it for Christmas time. Like
She has actually. She was one of he was one of her first guests, and they talked about Babes in Toyland.
oh, that's amazing. See, I'm gonna have
They
to look it up because I didn't do my
threw it
research
together.
on that. I just was kind of hoping like sometimes like talk shows do like recreations of scenes and stuff. I'm like,
Can
please,
you imagine?
I would love it. Yeah.
But they stayed very close. Drew Barrymore and Keanu Reeves have stayed so close over the years, so close over the year because of this film. And he took such good care of her, she said. But yeah, on her TV show, she goes, "It's can you believe it's the 30th anniversary of Babes in Toyland?" And he's like, "Yes." And they talked a little bit about it. And I think Drew alluded. We won't get too into the heavy. I think Drew alluded to the fact that this was when she was quite going through some, when she was emancipated from her mother, and even though she was like 12 or 13 in this movie, not soon after this when Drew sort of went down a really dark path, and I think Keanu took her under his wing, and I don't think she ever forgot him because of that. So he kept her like level headed. So I think she was going through a rough time in this movie. And I think Gookie Gress, when I interviewed him, alluded that this movie and this set allowed her to actually be a kid that she could never be before by driving these little cars and being around these animals and the toys and the cookies and the candy, that he saw something within her that she was able to be a kid, even though she wasn't a small kid. She was able to live a life that she had never really had before, and she was protected under this set. And they really took her under a wing. And he said that sometimes they would have to practice the carts. They actually drove the carts, and she would just be so happy. And I think this movie gave her like a shelter from the storm of her life. And so I think that's why she really just hams it up, and she's so happy because this was like the dead period, in Drew Barrymore's career before she did like Poison Ivy and, Batman Forever. This is before she came back. And so this was kind of the dead period after she had was a really weird adolescent age, which is really hard for any actress in Hollywood to be an adolescent, you know. But for all intents and purposes, she said that she loved this film, and Gookie Gress alluded to like it was because she was actually able to be a kid on this set, whereas other sets really didn't allow her to. They expected her to be too mature. So I think there's just a really sweet aspect of this movie. But for well, before we get into the music, what's really weird to me, and it's such a weird thing, is how movies get cut down and edited. I mean, even the best little whorehouse in Texas. Oh God, Helena's gonna get on my case because she said I mentioned that damn movie every podcast. It don't matter what we're talking about. The best little whorehouse in Texas always gets mentioned. Y'all need to have a count. But even that movie had so much deleted from it. We've never seen the light of day. It only aired once before in America. But this movie, the version that Jamie and I grew up with was a 90-minute cut that was released on video. And for all of my life, I thought that was the only cut that existed until 2016 or 2017, where I realized that the theatrical version that was released in Germany and Europe and aired one time on American networks was 2 hours and 24 minutes. And it's like a completely different movie. I was watching it with my niece before we did the podcast, and she said, "This is too long." I was like, "Shut up and get in the Christmas spirit." But what do y'all think about that before we get into the music? What do you think of how weird it is? I'm not sure, like, what version did you all watch to sort of relearn this or to visit it? Jamie, did you have the 90-minute version in your head?
Yeah, I probably watched the 90-minute version because it was on a VHS. I distinctly remember that. But the to rewatch it and revisit it, I ended up watching the longer version that's on YouTube that you sent to the group.
It's crazy.
Like I think I don't, because again, it was so long ago when I watched the 90-minute version that I don't remember like how different it is. Maybe I'll revisit it and then compare it against what I watch now. But that just feels like a crime. That feels like a crime because I loved what I saw on YouTube of
Right.
that version. I loved it.
And there's no explanation whatsoever to why it was released edited and chopped for the VHS version. And Janice and Janice and Renee, y'all's first introduction was this 2 hour and 24-minute version, which is great because I'm so glad you got to see it in its entirety, how it was meant to be, versus it being a 90-minute version that was we grew up with. Because the only American version that's ever been released on VHS, then now Blu-ray and streaming, is the 90-minute cut. So I guess before we get into the music and everything, do y'all think that's just an injustice that the movie, that there's a print that exists that's full, that was meant to be viewed and meant to air 2 hours and 24 minutes, but we're only being released a 90-minute version?
So we didn't actually end up seeing the full 2 hour version. We saw the 90-minute version. And
Hey.
quite frankly, I agree with you. The 2 hour version definitely would have been better. Like it felt chopped. Like
Yeah.
there are parts where it's clearly chopped up. It's like, wait, when did they get there? You know, like it's like they're like going to the forest or whatever, and then they're already in the forest, you know, like it's just very choppy. And from what I've heard, there's like at least one, maybe two songs that are cut from it.
4.
Four! That's ridiculous. I hate that. Well, 2 hours is the appropriate one. What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
So
Feels
strange.
too long, but not for releasing it on VHS. Like maybe too long for TV, but not.
And our guest host from Video Dropbox, what do you guys think about that? The weird reality of releasing a cut version. I don't want to harp on this too much, though.
It feels really like they probably did that because they're trying to market it, I'm assuming, more towards like kids and families. And especially if it's a made for TV movie, they're like, again, attention span. But watching the longer cut and again seeing the 90-minute version so like close in time, like meaning just watching it and then watching the director's cut, I don't know, they're just like very subtle things that I even like mentioned to Joe that I'm like, it's a little bit like, I don't want to say hornier because it's not like, but like sexier. Like Jack and Mary are kissing a lot more, being way more affectionate. There's this great musical number, what we can talk about, that I think is like my favorite. but it definitely like changes the vibe. And one other thing that I picked up on is the scene where Georgie and oh my gosh, Drew Barrymore, forgetting her, Lisa are walking through the forest. It's a lot. I think the trolls are a lot creepier in the longer version because, like, I don't know, even the sound effects and like maybe the quality of the images were a little bit darker and scarier. That I don't know. It just kind of took it away from the theatrical version. It just kind of didn't feel
Yeah.
like the stakes were as high.
What about you, Joe?
I mean, I find it strange that I would think that the selling point of the movie to kids, like, oh, it's a musical, there's songs. So why are you cutting so many songs? Like, I don't know if there was a test group that like, oh, well, these ones are a little slow, but they're not really. Like, I would argue like maybe one,
I,
maybe like hurt the pacing a bit, but the others,
I,
it's just weird.
you know, the longer version was released in Germany and Europe as a theatrical. So maybe the attention span of 2 hours and 24 minutes, and the original broadcast version was 2 hours and 24 minutes. But I think the reason on VHS it was released for 90 minutes is because if you think about it, most family friendly movies that we grew up with are 90 minutes. That was like 90 minutes was all the attention span, I guess, for some test market or test audience. They're like, we've got to make a movie 90 minutes. But despite it being, cut and the version that, our friends from Ordinary Kids saw, even the 90-minute cut like that they saw and Jamie and I grew up with, it's still endearing. And it still obviously made an impact on us that we remembered it for so many years. I didn't even know the director's cut existed until 2016 or 2017. And I was able to find it on the Pirate Bay. Do you remember the Pirate Bay? Used to always get goddamn viruses on my computer. But I digress. But yeah, I mean, even the version that Jamie and I grew up with is the end that the Ordinary Kid saw. It's 90 minutes, but it's still endearing. There's something about it that obviously we never forgot. So, doing some research on this, I didn't even know this, and I should have known this. So, when you think about the music in this particular movie, the reason that we love cult musicals is because of the music. We probably wouldn't even be talking about this movie, obviously, if it wasn't a musical. And it may not have resonated and been in our minds and subconsciouses for so long if it wasn't a musical. But doing some research, the composer, the British composer for this movie, Leslie Bricusse, he composed the music for Hook, Victor Victoria, Dr. Dolittle, and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So this is not some composer that they just hired on a shoestring budget to just write the music for this made-for-TV movie. This composer wrote music for all these masterpieces. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Dr. Dolittle and Hook and Victor Victoria. He was not only a musician, but he was also a lyricist. So some of his projects he wrote the lyrics for, and some he wrote the music and the lyrics. But he actually just recently passed away in 2021. But before we get into the songs themselves, what do y'all think about like this movie actually had one of the most famous Broadway composers ever compose the music for it? What do y'all think about that?
Well, that's news to me, and that explains why it gets stuck in some of the songs get stuck in my head even like 20 plus years later.
What about y'all, Ordinary Kids? It's the same composer from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
That kind of blows my mind. I had no idea. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. His work's amazing. I love all of those things you just listed.
I still don't know how I didn't know about this movie when I was growing up. I don't know what timeline I'm on because the one I grew up in didn't have this movie. There was 1934. That was it. So
But that's what we love. That's why we love you, because you know weird movies, and I'm going to mention it again. Return to Oz.
Yep.
But yeah, the music in this movie, it's endearing, and on the surface it may seem really cheesy. And obviously, for my interview with Googie Gress, there's only three people who actually sang in the film, which were Richard Mulligan, Barnaby. He actually sang. Pat Morita. Oh, God bless Pat Morita, the toy master. He can't sing to save his life. And then for all intents and purposes, Keanu Reeves possibly actually sang in this movie because I dug and did some research. He had a band, and there's a movie I can't remember. It's like a jazz movie. He sang, and it sounds just like the singer in Babes in Toyland. So I'm assuming that Keanu Reeves actually sung, but Jill and Dookie Gress, who played Georgie Porgy, and Drew Barrymore, of course, had their voices dubbed. But despite that, don't y'all think this music is just so charming?
100%. Yeah, like that was one of the things that I enjoyed the most about this film is like it surprised me because I mean it could go either way. Like for again, I went into it thinking it's a family slash kids film, so I thought it was going to be very like cheesy and sort of just childlike. But again, like the songs stick with you, like everyone said, and obviously they're the heavy hitters like Cincinnati and May the Years to Come. But yeah, they're definitely earworms.
They are. And Jamie, was the music one thing that sort of resonated with you as a child that you never forgot, besides the glamour and the pastel colors and just the Christmas spirit? But did the music ever stick with you? Is that one of the reasons that you never forgot about this movie?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. The marriage song, like I still remember the words, or at least some derivative of the
Yeah.
words for it, like years later. Like I want to say it's been like almost 20 years since I saw it originally. I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I still remember it. Just like
All right, everybody, let's give Jamie a bing bong, and you can start. But
so
that
cute.
so the songs that you have in this film that weren't cut, and we'll talk about the longer cut, are Cincinnati, which the movie opens with not Cincinnati, sorry, the only non-original song in this movie is Toyland, which is from the stage musical, which was the 1930 version, which was in the version in the 50s with Annette Funicello. So that's a classic standard that's on Christmas, Toyland. That's not an original song, Toyland, Toyland. But the rest of the songs in the film are completely original. So of course you have Cincinnati, which I always laugh because it's like if you listen to the lyrics, the things they're so excited about are the baseball game and the Queen of Ohio's Alpine ski resorts. And like it's so witty. I just love the lyrics. It's like the girls are pretty, pretty, and
Pretty and the
the
pretty. Yeah. That
fellas
also
are spicy as I see.
it's still that also is another one that stuck with me too. What's even funnier is that I went to Cincinnati for the first time a few months ago, and of course, as we're driving through, we were there to visit the Denton Affair, and of course, I had that running through my head as I was driving.
Wait, y'all. Babes in Toyland takes place in the same state as Rocky Horror. Do you think there's a Denton connection?
It's
Maybe
very
shock
it's
treatment.
Yeah.
Shock treatment
Well,
connection. Dun, 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 dun.
well, I've actually asked Buffalo Rocky, which are the kings and queens of Rocky Horror, and I think we all theorized that even though Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment take place in the same universe, we theorized that Rocky Horror takes place in Denton, Ohio, but Shock Treatment takes place in Denton, Texas. And it kind of adds up and makes sense because everybody's in cowboy attire when you watch Shock Treatment. So, ain't that weird? I don't know. Somebody needs to write a thesis on that. But Cincinnati, but it's like a song. That's one of the songs that gets. I was actually. It snowed the other day in England, and I'm not used to snow. And I was walking, and I was listening to my headphones, and it was like the girls are pretty, pretty in this gritty little city. The fellas, it just comes to you. It never leaves your mind, and it's like it's. I was watching it with my niece, and I'm like, how do I know these words? It's like these words never leave you, and it's like I come from. It's so great. But starting on that song, what do y'all think about that? We could get everybody's opinion. I think that's the quintessential song, one of the quintessential songs from this movie. So, what's everybody's opinion about Cincinnati?
I'm just fascinated about why did the composer pick Cincinnati out of all places? Which my guess is, did he know about Pete Rose? Pete Rose was a big thing back when they were filming it. But
Well, they're all British and German, so I think
yeah,
it was
like
let's,
how did they know? So
let's
obviously they don't really know the geography of the land, but yeah, just so random, but that makes it so much more endearing as well. It's like, why is this here? It's fine. It's great.
Did they do the like Abu Dhabi Garfield thing and spin a globe and point, oh, Cincinnati it
oh my
is.
God. I just have something. So the Ordinary Kids and the troupe that Jamie belongs to, they branch out and do
JCCP.
yeah, JCCP. Y'all always branch out and do things other than Rocky Horror. One Christmas, y'all need a shadow cast Babes in Toyland. Can't y'all make this happen? I don't think the rights are like, I don't think anybody's gonna come knock on y'all's door.
We would need so many people though. It's a huge
I mean,
cast.
you're already dressed as Mother Hubbard, and I'm already dressed as Barnaby.
But there's
So
Just have
many
it
I'm ready.
be. Listen, just have it be a celluloid jam thing. There used to be this like we have like YinzCon and things like that coming up next year. But there's things that were kind of like almost like con with having a bunch of casts come together, not quite as big, but if we do celluloid jam again sometime,
Can you
Yes.
just can you just imagine? It would be hilarious. Uh, but the other earworm and the other song that always stuck with me and Jamie, of course, and everybody else was the wedding song slash the Christmas song, which actually has the title May the Years to Come. So there's a May Years to Come and there's a May Years to Come reprise, which the first time we hear it is outside of the store that Jack and then Lisa, Jack and Jill, correct? Her sister's Jill, not Jill, Jack and Mary.
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 Mary and yeah.
Played by Jack and Mary. You hear
Big
the children,
fan.
right? You hear the children singing, May we wish you the happiest Christmas, everyone. So that's the first time you hear it. And then you hear it again over the intercoms and speakers in the toy store. But then the reprise, the wedding song, that song always stuck with me. I don't know about you all, but I always thought that song was quite beautiful. Like I always was like, if I ever get married, I would love that song. I know it's cheesy, and it's so campy, but oh, what do y'all think about that song that May the Years to Come?
That's my favorite one. It's beautiful. And then toward the end of the wedding song itself, they do this like beautiful counterpoint harmony, and it's just like yeah, that would be a really good wedding song actually. And I was a little shitty when it didn't do that counterpoint again when they did it the Christmas version. They didn't do it. I was waiting for it and it didn't happen, and I was like, but it is a beautiful song. That's the one that stuck in my head.
And I can't wait to see you get married and dance to a song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
everybody,
the way that's going now, you might have to see it via Ouija board because I'll probably be dead. But what about our special guest? What did she think about the song May the Years to Come?
That was definitely the one that my husband like would be singing around the house, as I mentioned before. And I had joked like if we renew our vows, we should definitely play that and do like they did and put like our rings on a giant cookie. Because we just love to just like lounge in the house and eat like Dairy Queen and cookies. And so it's like, yeah, what would be more fitting than either putting our rings in a blizzard or like a giant like crumble cookie?
That's actually
Listen, do the Pittsburgh way of celebrating weddings and have a cookie table.
That sounds fantastic.
Have y'all not heard of that?
No.
Yeah, it's a Pittsburgh wedding tradition where like some folks maybe don't do cakes and instead it's a cookie table of all these different kinds of cookies. Yeah. Like I had never been to a Pittsburgh wedding until this past October. Two of our castmates got married and that I'd experienced the glory that is the Pittsburgh cookie table and I don't think I want to go back. So do the cookie table. It's what Georgie Porgy would have wanted.
Oh my, could you imagine him like eating good old Georgie Porgy? But then we have my niece watch it with my niece. My niece is 20, so I'm like a really young uncle. So I used to have her watch this, and we were watching it now, and she goes, she wasn't really paying attention. So when it got to let's hear it for the girl of the month, No. She was like, why are they praising her? I was like, did you not see what she just did? She saved love. But she's like, why are they giving her a parade? I'm like, why not? But that's another really earworm. It's like, let's hear it for the girl of the month. No more than a month, the whole year. I mean, it's such a, the music in this movie, it may not be deep and it may not be, something that is going to be, receive Emmy awards, etc. But it's so catchy and it's so well done. Obviously, that it's made such an impression on us. The wedding song, Cincinnati, this song with her, uh, "Let's Hear It for the Girl." These are such good, sweet, wholesome songs, and it's what like you go back and watch it. If you've been away from this movie for 20 or 10 to 20 years and you go back, you still remember the beats. I mean, Jamie was like rocking to this. But do you remember that song, Jamie? That when they're like she
When
gets
they
married. Yeah.
when she stops the wedding and like everyone's like cheering around her. That one didn't quite stick with me quite as much as the other two did, to be honest. It was more of those two. Um, but after those songs, the things I remembered most about this movie were like the things that kind of creep me out, which we can talk about later. And like the certain scenes stood out to me the most. So we could talk more there, but the music, those two songs were definitely the ones that stayed with me the most.
And then the two other songs that were in the original was in the cut that we've all seen, the 90-minute cut, were Monster Piece with Richard Mulligan singing to Trolog, and the One-Eyed Bird Troll. I'm so short that I would have to probably play Trolog at one of y'all's weddings or for the y'all's convention because I'm only 5'2", so I'll probably be Trolog. I call it. But Monster Piece, when he's singing in a really dark, I mean, that's a really screwed up song and it's really scary. But I mean, I mean, villains have the best songs, but I love Richard Mulligan, but he can't sing.
Yeah, he can't. Trellig also like scarred me for life. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That's one of the things I remembered most about this, besides all the pastel candy coated things. It's a fucking Trolloc, especially with his eye blacked out. No, it was bad.
And to know that there, for all intents and purposes, there's probably a little person in there. And it's like, this is a Christmas movie. Like, what's up with Trolog? And then Zach and Mac, his henchmen, they always screwed me over. Like, they always like scared me. But and then of course the song that made the cut was "Eyes of a Child," where Pat Morita tried to sing. The Toy Master tried to sing. What do y'all think of that song, everybody?
Good golly, he tried.
Yeah, that one got a little rough, especially like for a pacing issue. Like, oh, we're headed towards the final battle. Like, here's Pat Morita trying to sing. It's like, okay.
He's so
And
charming, though. I can forgive him a
Yeah.
little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
but the
Still
thing about Pat, what's his last name? Morita, right? Morita. I've always called it Morita. He was on Happy Days, and he of course is in the credits. He's actually American, and his accent are like ours. But the thing that's kind of messed up is for every movie that he was in, they made him fake a Chinese accent. But his accent was, I mean, if you watch his interviews, he's very intellectual. He was a trained actor for university. So it's kind of screwed up, but it's the 80s. What can we say? It was the 80s. So for this movie and then the Karate Kid, they had him really like do a stereotypical Chinese accent. But his accent, he wasn't that way at all. Like watch his interviews, he's so eloquently spoken. And so like I think he was like, hey, what the hell is a paycheck? Why not? But like the Toy Master, like, does anybody have any theories about where the hell the Toy Master is from and what's going on with this? Like, is he doing Santa Claus's job for him? Like, and the
I
like
thought
the
he was like actually Santa.
Yeah, it's a Clark Kent situation, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was Clark Kent, and this is Santa. Just shh.
But I think Georgie says something besides Santa Claus, Toy Master is the most beloved person. So I mean, who is the Toy Master? It's really interesting. I mean, I don't know. I digress, but I've always found it really weird. I mean, God bless Pat. But what did you guys think of that song, "The Eyes of the Child," that he sang? Sang an air quote.
He tried, and he's so sweet. I wasn't very much of a fan of that song. But he like it was endearing, you know.
I was just happy to be there with him.
Yeah, I'm like, it's Mr. Miyagi singing us a bedtime song. I'm so happy.
And I was telling them before you came in, when I interviewed Doogie S, I asked him for any funny trivia from the movie. He said Pat never even bothered to learn his lines at all. So for every take, he would say, line, and the lady with the script would tell him his lines and he would do it. And then he'd be like, next line, and they would do it that way. And so I think he was just I think he was just a cool, laid back, chill dude. And I didn't think he took it too seriously. But I mean, I don't think anybody took this movie too seriously that was in the film, because you can tell everybody's having such a good time. Everybody's having such a good time. But yeah, yeah. Uh-oh.
Can I just say I was thrilled for the Mario Kart session? Okay,
Yeah.
I want to play Mario Kart with those actors. They had a blast. You could tell they were having a great time. I love that scene.
It is. I was always envious of them as a kid. I was like, I would love to do that. They looked like they were having such a good time.
Yep.
But the other music that was in the extended cut was "We'll Think of Something," is when they're it's a duet between Mary, Lisa, and Googie Grass is Georgie Porgy's character, when they're talking about breaking Jack out of jail. And there's a song, it's the feeling, that Mary and Jack duet with what's in jail, which is another one that was cut. And then there's a Cincinnati reprise that's a bit slower. So it's for when you guys finally go watch the 2 hour version, there are like 3 to 4 songs that were cut from it. I mean, you get to hear Keanu's further pipes, what he can do with his voice. And then you can hear the other characters sing. So for those who were able to see the extended cut, what did you think of those 3 to 4 other songs that didn't make it in the 90-minute video version?
Yeah, I think like It's the Feeling is probably one of my favorite sequences, because like I had mentioned earlier, like the movie is a little bit more sexy like when you see this scene, because it's literally Jack. For those who haven't seen it, it's like Jack is on, his side of the bars in jail, and Mary's talking to him, and she just busts into the song called It's the Feeling. And there's a scene where like he's like literally pressed up against the bars, and she like backs into the bars and like lowers herself down and talks about like it's the feeling of smoothing on lotion. And it's just like very odd. You're like, again, this isn't a Christmas song, and it's like taking you out of this like kids film and taking it more into like that 80s PG, I guess, because there was probably no PG-13 at the time, like scene. But it's still very innocent. But I just, for all those reasons, like I love it. And then the other one that stood out to me is, I don't know if it's just like a reprise of Toyland, but at the end it makes so much more sense, because one of my complaints to Joe is like the back end of the movie in the theatrical cut, the 90-minute version, is like once Barnaby's out of there, it's like boom, 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 boom. Like everything's moving fast. Like marriage, like Lisa's just like waving goodbye, like bye everyone. The toy master rolls up, they're out of there. And in the director's cut, there's an actual like extended song where she's like singing to all the toys, saying like goodbye everyone, like goodbye Mother Hubbard, like. And it makes so much more sense, because I've always felt like this movie essentially feels like the 80s version of Wizard of Oz. I mean, even down to like her bonking her head and like seeing everyone like from the real world in this now Toyland. And so it felt like it was the right thing to do to have that sort of Dorothy saying goodbye moment. And again, shout out to Return to Oz. Like I'm a big fan of that. Like opposed to that again in the 80s, where it was like very like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. Like that's what the theatrical version feels like. Like you're gone, Lisa. Like we're taking you out. You're done now.
Yeah, Joe, what do you think about the cut songs? And then I want to move into the characters and the things we love and the things we don't love. What do you think about, Joe, about these songs that were cut?
Well, it's not my favorite song, but I do appreciate the "I Live in Two Worlds" song that Drew Barrymore sings because I feel that helps with her character or like the theme of the movie. Because in the theatrical cut, it's they get down to like in the Toymaker's song, like he all of a sudden late in the movie he's like, "Whoa, well, you need to believe and be a kid," and she's mentioned like, "Oh, I'm an adult," like twice in the theatrical cut, so it seems to come out of nowhere. But this song I feel really puts that more in
Yeah.
context of like she wants to grow up and she has this home life that doesn't seem to be the best a little bit that we get of it. Um, and now she has to maybe go into this forest of evil creatures, so it's like how to deal with reality and or fantasy. I'm like, oh, that's a nice little bit of characterization for her.
Now we're going to get into, I want to go around, and there's something really profound that I just realized is that Lisa really mirrors Drew Barrymore a lot during this period because Lisa was forced to grow up. I mean, Lisa's not a child. She doesn't want toys. She has to take care of her little brother, her mom, her sister. And Drew Barrymore was sort of forced into that. She was forced to grow up. I mean, Drew Barrymore has talked about her really screwed up childhood and how her parents were just terrible. And I think there was a lot of that in Lisa. And I think Lisa discovers that she can be mature, but she still has parts of herself. It's very Sarah from Labyrinth, very Sarah from Labyrinth. When she finally, in the end of Labyrinth, she tells, Ludo and Hoggle and Sir Didymus, I'll still need you for one reason or another, for no reason at all. I'll still need you. And I think Lisa and Sarah from Labyrinth sort of go through this same journey where they want to be mature and they don't want to play with toys and they want to be adult, but they realize through going to this fantastical land and stuff that it's okay to toe the line between being a young woman and still having child attributes. And I think that's a really sweet thing that this movie does. And I think it's really sort of mirrors Drew Barrymore's own experiences as well. So I think that's something, and maybe that's why Drew Barrymore loves this movie so much. And I'll send you guys the interview she did with Keanu Reeves, and she sort of alluded to, and Googie Gress's interview that I did, he sort of alluded to, and she alluded to that this movie helped her feel like a kid again because she was never given an opportunity to be a kid. Because this is around the same time she got emancipated from her parents because they were so terrible. And so her driving around in the cars and her being able to sing, quote unquote, but dance and be with like these kids, I mean, these bunnies and all this stuff. You could see that Drew Barrymore may have been experiencing something that she had never experienced before, which was a childhood. It's kind of sweet. I don't know. There's something really endearing about that. Not to get weepy, but there's something really sweet about that. We'll go around and say, does anyone have a favorite character and then a character that just scares the shit out of them?
I can answer both those questions pretty quickly. Fucking Trollop scared me even as a kid. Still creeps me out as an adult. For sure. Um, Honestly, I think Georgie's my favorite out of all of them. He's just a sweet guy and, sweet, little dumb. That's how I like it.
That's
Sweet and dumb guys.
how you like sweet, little, and dumb. Oh,
Yep. One that I will never want to date either, because I'm like, you know what? I can watch and be amused by you. You're cool. You're cool by me. You're one of the few guys that are cool.
so of course, Trolog is terrifying for anybody. And especially when Lisa paints her eye black, that's terrifying. And they lock it. I think it says she lock him in, like lock Trolog into like a toy box or something.
Yeah, like a cupboard or something like that. I remember that, like when she blacked out the eye, that also scarred me as a child. That's
It
did
makes
not
that
leave me
it
easily.
makes that noise like uh how about everybody else? What do y'all who's your favorite character and least favorite characters? Mother
Oh,
Hubbard and
um, I wasn't really impressed with Mary Contrary, but I liked I did like Barnaby. Maybe not as like the predecessor Barnaby, but MD Ness guy really, it was kind of fun seeing him in that role.
Mm-hmm.
Uh
I loved Mother Hubbard. Like she was
Mhm.
she'd write everything down. She's like the ADHD disaster I didn't know I needed as a role model in my life. You know, out there having like 20 million children, not knowing their
Right?
fucking names, like fucking icon. All right. So that's
She's
Mother Hubbard. I
Octomom
love it.
before Octomom.
Yeah, right? Like she's messed up. I love her.
But there's the henchmen too. The
But
henchmen are
my
great.
all-time favorite is the henchman, the
That
Nosferatu and the Igor. I
Yeah.
don't know what their real names are, but
Zach and
like those
Zach and Mac.
eyebrows. Oh my god! Yes.
Those eyebrows are everything.
Those
And you
eyebrows gave me
what?
life.
Zach and Mac. I've always loved Zach and Mac, but they look very riffraff. Don't they look very riffraff?
That's what Janice said on the one of them. We had Nosferatu and fucked up Riff Raff.
Yeah, and Frankenstein riffraff.
Yeah.
Well, they look like maybe like in a German adaptation stage musical adapt a stage version of Rocky Horror, because they always do German Georgie Googie Gress said that the costume all the costumes were done in London. So there's a very 80s phantom, even Barnaby, the feathers. I think what Barnaby wears is fabulous. Isn't it very,
Yeah, the fashion. Like
Yeah, it was good
I
fashion.
lived for all of the fashion and everything in this movie.
very
But yeah,
David,
the henchmen were my favorite.
David Bowie, very Michael Jackson, Prince. I would wear. I think I want to be Barnaby. When I run for president one day and be a fascist, I'm gonna dress like Barnaby.
You're fascist. I'm dying.
My God, he's not the sweet cinnamon roll I thought he was. My boy.
There's still time. There's still hope.
I hope. I'll
Barnaby-
keep the feathers.
Barnaby's fabulous, and I love Zach and Mac. What do you got? What about the video Dropbox? Who's y'all's favorite characters?
I definitely got a huge kick out of Zach and Mac as well. Like their slapstick is incredible and just insane. And even in the director's cut, like there's just things that you didn't see before where they're like walking in basically into the scene and there's just like balloons and they're just like popping every balloon as they're walking through the scene just because they're bad and evil and pissed off about what. I also have to give a big shout out to another cut thing was Humpty Dumpty, because you see him and you're all like waiting, right? You're like waiting for him to like fall or do something right, but you just like, oh, there's Humpty Dumpty. But there's this like running joke that he's basically this gossip, like this gossipy queen in town that like you can't tell anything to anyone, anything to him, otherwise he'll just repeat it to the entire town. And so there's this great scene again for the two that love Mother Hubbard, like you definitely have to watch this director's cut because there's a scene where like she walks right up to him and she's just like, yeah, he came to see me. And just like knowing it's going to get back to the town because it's that whole storyline of like Lisa trying to hook up Barnaby with Mother Hubbard and her thinking that he's coming back for her. But it's only Fatty, I think is what she says when Georgie comes back, which is so shady.
Jesus. I love Mother Hubbard, and I'll get to her in a minute. But Josh, oh no,
Yeah. So I have a soft spot for Richard Mulligan. I grew up watching Empty Nest, which in retrospect is kind of a weird show that a kid is watching, but he had a big dog in it, so I love that. I don't have a least favorite character. The scariest, I agree, Trolog. Very, very freaky. And that's actually the same actor in the suit as Hoggle in Labyrinth. So I'm like, whoa,
my God,
that person really had the market on the creatures in the 80s.
never knew that. Oh, musical connection. What do y'all think about that? That's Hoggle.
Yeah, Sherry Weiser is her name.
Holy shit.
We were screaming over here. I'm glad we were muted. We would have disrupted everything.
It's
We were
Hoggle.
excited about that news.
Whole musical connection. Jamie, what do you think about that Trolog that you hate? It's actually Hoggle from Labyrinth.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I still fucking hate that character though. The person playing Trolloc did a great job. and the person who came up with the costume did a great job because they lightly traumatized me. It's fine.
And the weird jumping with and flapping the feathers. I think we all need to give Mrs. Hubbard her flowers, but also Miss Eileen Brennan, who, I mean, she's such an underrated actress. There's so much Mrs. Peacock in Mrs. Hubbard, and so much as Mrs. Hubbard in Mrs. Peacock. And she just chews the scenery and the way that she looks and just the way that she acts sometimes. She's so bitchy, and I love her so much. And I just love her. I love Eileen Brennan, and I love her as Mrs. Peacock, and I love her as Mrs. Hubbard. And I think she's just so loved in the cult community because of her role as Mrs. Peacock. And for those to see her in this, it's just like, ah, Mrs. Peacock. And it's like there's a lot of Mrs. Peacock within Mrs. Hubbard. There's a lot of that funny cattiness and also the over exaggeration. It's so cute. And I also love Zach and Mac because they're just, I was terrified. I was terrified of them growing up. But then as I got older and got into Rocky Horror, I'm like, they actually look like Riff Raff. And I'm wondering maybe if there was some inspiration, but there has to be some inspiration with Zach and Mac with Riff Raff. I mean, Riff Raff is a very original looking character.
I think especially because they probably, if not directly from Rocky Horror, they probably pulled from similar like pools of inspiration that Riff Raff's character came from, of
Yeah.
the hulking, the creepy looking like henchman, that kind of thing. So I think they pull, if not directly from Riff Raff, probably the same pool of inspiration. I do love like when they were trying to like stop Jack from like interrupting the wedding, they're just like doing like these little it's like invisible force field, huh? Like always makes me laugh.
I don't even think those actors spoke English. Because I think all of the actors besides the main characters we have that were American, if I'm not mistaken, everybody else was German because it was filmed in Munich, Germany, the same sound studios as The Neverending Story. So it's filmed in the same exact, but it looks different now. I mean, the backstages of Bavarian Film Studios, which you can tour, they changed it. But for whatever reason, they had this fairy tale sort of lullaby land, etc. there at the Bavarian Film Studio. So it was filmed in the same vicinity in Munich as The Neverending Story. So there's that cult connection as well. But obviously it was filmed in the summer, because if you film, in Germany in winter, you're not going to be able to. But there's something really interesting about it. I mean, it takes place at Christmas time, but would you argue? I watch it every Christmas. I have to. But do you see this, everybody, as a Christmas movie? What do y'all see this as a Christmas movie?
Oh yeah, definitely. But bringing it back to the Riff Raff thing. So here's your connection. It must be Santa, or the toy maker must be Transylvanian, as is Barnaby. That's why they're magical.
Fashion.
They're from somewhere else. They're in Denton. And that's why they're surrounded by the Forest of Night, was it?
Yeah.
So are they in Transylvania and the toy maker's fucking around and trying to make a better place? Or are they from Transylvania in Denton again?
Whoa, we went deep.
My Rocky Horror aficionados, you guys know Rocky Horror more than I do, even though I love Rocky Horror. Isn't there a Transylvanian that's Asian? What if that's the toy master?
Oh my God,
I'm
I'm gonna have to look into it.
Oh.
I'd have to look into it.
I think there's an Asian toy Transylvanian. Maybe that's the toy master.
Oh, we'll look into it.
110%.
I don't know.
It is definitely a Christmas movie, though.
I'm down to connect all of the bullet points, on the cork board and everything. Let's do this.
Well, Howard the Duck takes place in Cincinnati.
Holy shit.
There's the cult connection. They're all taken. I mean, God bless Ohio. Not only are they state, but you got Rocky Horror takes place there, Babes in Toyland, and Howard the Duck. So they got a lot of weird stuff happening in Cincinnati and in the surrounding areas. So they got some
Ohio.
So Ohio has the wormhole directly to Transylvania. Got it.
Wow. Wow, it had the wormhole to Howard the Duck too.
But for everybody else, do y'all I know I consider this a Christmas movie because that's when I watched it, and Jamie. But do Jamie and our guest, do you guys consider this a Christmas movie? Or do you think it's just like a movie with the Christmas label attached to it?
I think it can be enjoyed at any time of the year. It doesn't like some movies, I feel like it would be almost wrong to watch outside of like near the holidays. This one's not one of them.
Yeah, I think it's Christmas and Easter because it's so pastel.
Yeah.
Uh, it just equal. It covers all those. The multiple
I
viewing.
agree. Yeah, it's definitely a Christmas movie. We recently had an argument because we got to pick Christmas picks for our podcast, and I chose Spoiler Alert, the 2022 film with Jim Parsons and his partner who died, and everyone was like, "That's not a Christmas movie," and I was like, "There are Christmas scenes." So I am not the right person to be asking because I would also consider Steel Magnolia a Christmas movie.
Hey, Best Little Whorehouse has Hard Candy Christmas. Batman Returns is a Christmas movie because it takes place at Christmas. But I mean, this is Christmas, definitely. I mean, look behind you. Jack's wearing, actually, look behind you. Yeah, Jack's wearing Christmas, and it takes place at Christmas. But it's interesting when Lisa goes to Toyland. Happens to be spring or summer. Isn't that interesting? And do they ever mention Christmas while she's in Toyland? I don't think they ever even mention Christmas while she's in Toyland.
I think just at the end, they obviously all that stuff with Santa and the wooden reindeer.
Which
Um,
is interesting.
but I also, again, director's cut, like it explains so much to me because I remember asking Joe, I'm like, why is it daylight all the time? And there's a line in the director's cut that says something about like where it's never nighttime, it's always days, so we can XYZ. I don't remember exactly what they say. Um, so
For this to be a kids movie, though, really great is the 80s. 80s horror, 80s fantasy films for families always had that dark aspect. Um, the night forest where Barnaby inhabits, that's quite terrifying for that to be in a Christmas film, with Trolog and the troll, the tree trolls. That's actually in the forest of the night. That's actually quite terrifying, is it not?
I think a lot of the credit really goes to that production designer because actually I was obsessed as a kid with Neverending Story 2, and this has the
Oh,
same person. So like watching Babes in Toyland, not knowing that at first, I'm like, man, this really reminds me of that weird fantasy, like dark tinges atmosphere of Neverending Story 2. It's like, oh yeah, he's in Germany, so they're
I
working
didn't
on those
never
movies.
do love the Neverending Story too. I think it's beautiful. I mean, it's Neverending Stories 2 is beautiful and it actually follows the book very, very closely that it's the film's based on. So we all have come to this movie by different experiences. Jamie and I grew up with it and it made a lasting impact. Our friends from Ordinary Kids have rediscovered it after the terrifying and bizarre 1934 version. And you two have really sort of cosmic connections with it, which I think is so beautiful. If you had to wish this movie to have a legacy, what would you wish it to be? And Kino Lorber, who is the really culty home video company, just released it on Blu-ray, but unfortunately, it's the 90-minute cut. So it's a very beautiful, pristine version, but it just got released last month, but it's the 90-minute version. But besides that, I mean, at least we got it on Blu-ray, but I don't think they were able to obtain the print for television. But we always end this talking about what we hope the musical legacy would be of this movie, and we can go around. What do you hope this movie becomes? Do you wish more people would see it? What do you wish there would be screenings? What do y'all wish?
I think that it should be I know the kids these days don't have the same euphoria when they wheel the TV into the classroom. But I want that for kids to have that experience of just, hey kids, it's almost Christmas, let's watch a weird ass movie. I just want that to be something that you know, parents put on when they're like opening presents or something, like just having a nice little, I don't know. I just want it to be kind of part of the cozy, you know, I love this movie, and I've loved this movie since I was a kid because even though, yeah, scary things happen, it's the most comfortable fantasy world I ever like had growing up. And revisiting it now, especially with dealing with like inner child work and things like that, this is like a nice kind of little hug to little kid me. And so I want like
Aw.
I want to yeah, I want it to be like a cozy movie for like parents to be like, oh my god, this is what I used to watch when I was your age, you
It's
know.
very escapist. It's very escapist and very therapeutic. And there's something very cathartic about this movie that it's unlike, other cult musicals that we talk about. There's something that's very escapist by it. It's like you really want to go to the toy factory and you really want to go to the cookie factory and you want to ride in the cars. And I agree because in the childhood, this was one of my safe movies. Like it was one of the movie I revisited every year, and I built up anticipation to watch it. And I really like how you said that this sort of revisiting this movie is kind of like giving a hug to your child self. I don't know. It's deep, but it is deep. How about y'all, Barnaby and Mother Hubbard?
Um, I again, I'm like pretty mad. I didn't know it existed. So it was kind of really exciting to see another version of the Babes in Toyland I knew and loved and watched every single Christmas every year.
Aw.
And they did, yeah. And that's a legacy, I guess, like Jamie. Maybe, the that could be the next generation's every Christmas thing. Though there's always a special place in my heart for the Laurel and Hardy nonsense.
Aw.
Um, I I agree with everything that's been said so far. I feel like, after hearing about that interview that you saw with Drew Barrymore and everything, I'm like, I was kind of like mind blown, like, oh my God,
Yeah,
I didn't even think, that would be such a beautiful outlet for her to get out some childhood stuff, so like, I feel like that should be really quite the legacy that I want people to know
Yeah.
more about. Like, this is a very therapeutic sort of thing for a child, especially in the 80s. Like, that was a very sort of like therapeutic thing for a kid to, go through who's never experienced a fun childhood. Like, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I didn't know that growing up. I didn't, but I put two and two together after reading a lot about Drew Barrymore, about
Same.
like the I don't know if this is around the time she started experimenting in drugs, 'cause I don't want to harp on that. But I do know that like there's some, she was having it rough and she was having it with her parents and things like that. And this is before she had the career when she came back with Batman Forever and Poison Ivy and Charlie's Angels and stuff. But yeah, from all intents and purposes, when she was doing the interview with Keanu Reeves and she was like, you took such good care of me on that. You really took me on your wing and really, really enjoyed it. And then looking back at the notes from my archives of my interview with Googie Grass, it is kind of sad. I'm not gonna get weepy, but it's really happy that she was able to go on this set and play Lisa and just be a kid and ride around in cars. And I want to read y'all something right quick, if that's okay. There's something that touched me that Googie Grass said. But, do you have any? Let me see what he said. Oh, um, do you have any fond memories of making Babes in Toyland? He goes, I guess my fondest memory would be of Saturday mornings where we had time off and we were taken back over the lot to practice driving those little cars with the pastel flowers. Drew was just so happy that morning. And it was just so silly. It was such silly fun. And I remember quite fondly watching her just finally being happy. And it's like, it was just a sweet little, it's so sweet, and she's grown up to be like the most positive person. There's like memes online of how close she gets to the people she interviews, and she just holds their hands. But I think she's so genuine. And I think you see a little girl in this movie who was forced to grow up. And so did the character that she played,
Right.
and it's this movie. I think all of us, we're in this is Christmas movie episode. We're sort of trying to invoke the spirit of Christmas. So I'm trying to invoke the spirit of Christmas with everybody. I think, regardless if it's this movie or something, there's always movies from our childhood that we revisit sometimes and we get those warm feelings. And that's one of mine. And I think hopefully that can become, like you guys alluded to, and Jamie, hopefully this can be escapism for people, but also maybe it can be something that people watch with their kids or their spouses or their cats or something. Yeah, what do you guys think about the video Dropbox?
I think it would be wonderful if similarly, like, Peaches Christ does sort of these like movie
Yeah.
film screening events with like some of the original cast. I always feel like they do recreations and camp it up, but it's also sort of a way for the younger generation to like hear or see a film that they'd never heard about before. I think it'd be amazing to do something like that, so it could introduce again this film to the younger generation so they can experience this, because one of my favorite things about 80s films is that even though it's a family film, it is somewhat adult and it doesn't insult the audience or even the kids' intelligence by dumbing it down to make it like this really over the top kids film. It's like something for everyone, and that's why I've always been a huge fan of like the 80s anything, because it doesn't feel like it's catering to just one group of people. It's just kind of like broadly appealing to everyone. So that's one. And then two, I'm a huge vinyl collector, and so I would love to see this drop on vinyl, the whole full soundtrack. If it's not on vinyl, even CD or streaming somewhere, because I'm sure you can find it on YouTube, but like officially streaming somewhere.
Yeah, we've got to get it. That's how like things pick up steam, because it's taken some cult musicals years to get soundtracks. I mean, Pirate Movie doesn't even have an official soundtrack release yet. It was only released on vinyl, and Earth Girls Are Easy just now got released on streaming. So it would be great if this could. Kino Lorber did release it on Blu-ray, which is a step forward, and hopefully one day we can re-air in high quality the theatrical version. So maybe, possibly. What about you, other co-hosts from Video Dropbox?
Well, even if the new Blu-ray that came out is the edited version, I think that makes it a lot easier now for movie theaters to do midnight showings. And I'd be really curious to see if that would bring in the audience, because the kids that were watching the McDonald's VHS, like they're kind of in a sweet spot, whereas adults, they might be coming to it. And then from there, remembering the movie, then, you go on YouTube and you find the broadcast cut. So I think that the Blu-ray makes it a easy jumping off to actually get this movie more known.
Before we end, I only have two more questions. The first question is, I want everybody to answer is, do you have a favorite quote or line or look or something from this movie? And second, which I haven't asked in a very long time, if you had to name the cult that follows this movie, Rocky Horror fans have their own names, Shock Treatment fans have their own names, Phantom of the Paradise fans and Rockula fans, they have their own name. So the two questions I want everybody to answer is, do you have a favorite scene or line? And the second one, what would you name the cult that follows Babes in Toyland? And we can just go out of order if we want to, if anybody wants to talk first.
I have thoughts. First is, it's not affecting me. I must be immune. It must be because I'm from Cincinnati. Like every time cracks me up. Just
He's like,
of course.
Like, they're in like a very dark tunnel cave, and she's like, I'm from, and then she's trying to get them to sing, and they all sing like monsters. And there's like, and then Mary's like, ah. Anyway.
And then I will say, probably for a cult name, I would say probably Residents of Toyland. I think would be probably
that is a band name.
Just saying.
That's a kick-ass band name, Residents of Toyland. Okay, what about everybody else?
My favorite scene, honestly, is the ending when she wakes up. It's full on Wizard of Oz realness, okay? She wakes up from a concussion. Oh, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And then the mother's like, oh, thank God you woke up. We don't have to go to the hospital, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Like, that's the 80s, everybody. Wink. It's a Christmas tree. The end. It was chef's kiss perfection. I loved it. Best ending imaginable. In regards to like a name for like the people that follow it, I mean the first thing that came to like my mind, because my first instinct is Beetlejuice, is just babes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just babes.
I love that.
Okay, this is stupid, but so when they're in the cookie factory stealing the cookies, the henchmen,
Yes.
and
Oh my God, yeah.
he's like packaging it like so nicely, like making sure everything is nice, and then just fucking kicks it in and it goes flying. Like, I was sold. That
Yes.
was fantastic. The
Yes.
slapstick of it all.
I loved it. I did love that scene too.
Fantastic. And the aesthetic, the costumes were fantastic. You had like, Black Feathers McGee, and then you had all the pastel beautiful dresses and the big pointy hats, which were all callbacks to the original costumes. I saw so many of them with the pointed witch hat and like the tied the ribbon. She looked like Mother Goose. And there was a lot like the pigs, all the little animals that were running around. They didn't do the cat and the fiddle, that was fucked up, but
Glad.
so, yeah, but
Cat
like,
and mouse.
I saw a lot of similarities, which when I was watching, it was like, oh my God, they're doing it. So that stuck with me. I was glad for that.
And
I love
That was also, I was like, babes.
Babes. The babes.
Toy babes. Toy
it.
babes.
What about you all for video Dropbox?
I just turned 40 this year, and so the way I celebrated is I rented out the roller rink that I grew up like every weekend roller skating at, because I just wanted to play my own music and just totally relive that. And so I've always 100% was always like a huge like roller skating fan, aka like that's why I love Xanadu so much. So one of my favorite things about this movie is that whole like cookie factory roller skating montage. Like I remember talking to Joe and I was like, okay, this is 100% my shit. Like how can I quit my job so I can get a job making cookies, roller skating all day, and then go on a cookie break? Like he's just like, cookie break, everyone get out, and they're like, woo! Like that's like probably hands down one of my favorites. Also, all the sweet burns through this movie is pretty great. The one that comes to mind is the one where Georgie's like, wow, I bet Barnaby would really love to get his hands on that, the evil flask of whatever. And they're watching him through the Trolog, and he says, oh, he will, Georgie Porgy, you great fat lump. It's just like so shady. But my idea for the cult name was actually the Sinsawatskis.
Oh my God.
That could also be a band name, the Sinsawatskis.
Sinsawatski. I love it. That's so awesome. What about you, Josh?
I'm on board with the Sinsawatskis.
Sorry, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, Sinsawatskis. My other idea was the Googies. More people should know about Googie Grass.
Do you have a scene?
I would say my favorite shot is because Barnaby lives in that amazing giant bowling ball, which unfortunately they hint that he likes to roll it down into town, and we unfortunately don't get that scene, which I understand the logistics of that. But that awesome shot where Barnaby and his henchmen are poking their heads out of the 3 holes in the bowling ball is like, oh man, again, the production design, just chef's kiss.
I think my favorite, I know this is stupid, but I love how thirsty Mother Hubbard is. And I love how she really wants somebody to come and like support her and her kids. So first it's Barnaby because he's rich. But then have you noticed at the end, she's like talking to the preacher. She's like, you can come over to my shoes sometime. Very Mae West. I love how like she moved on real quickly from that. And I love how like I just love Barnaby and how like he has that long one fingernail that's black and he's like, see what? I just love every scene in this movie. But if I had to pick a name, I thought either the Toylanders, sort of like a nod to John Waters' Dreamlanders, the Toylanders, or in honor of Jamie, the Trologs.
Evil. Evil.
Y'all all had great things. But thank y'all so much. And I hope y'all all can revisit this Christmas. And I'm so glad y'all talked to me about this movie today, and y'all all joined to talk about this Christmas favorite, because it does get me in the Christmas spirit. And I really do hope all y'all have a Merry Christmas. Is there anything else y'all want to leave with before we bid adieu to go enjoy our Christmas festivities? How about how gorgeous Keanu Reeves was in this movie?
Absolutely. He was beautiful. And I think the only thing that we didn't really touch on is some of like the cool imagery. And the thing is, like for example, the teddy bears were
Uh,
totally the defenders of the nightmares. You know, like they fought the nightmares. You know, they were guarding the nightmare forest. Okay, and I just think that's really cute that teddy bears, you know, protect you from nightmares and stuff.
You know what they do at the teddy bear picnic? They will fuck you up.
Yeah, they will fuck you
There's
up
a
at the teddy bear
reason they
picnic.
were the police in this movie.
There's actually something that you said something about. Somebody said something about Keanu Reeves. I do want to leave this with one thing. So the chemistry between Mary and Jack, I want to leave this with one thing. I just found a note from what Googie Gress told me. He said Keanu and Jill were so much very in love while we were shooting this movie and spent a great chunks of their free time together. They were so enamored on one another, but when we were all together, we had a great time and great rapport. So that Mary and Jack chemistry was real because they were absolutely in love with each other, apparently. So, yeah, which makes sense. But thank y'all so much. And I hope y'all all have a Merry Christmas. And I thank y'all so much for joining me. It's been so great.